The day I was supposed to start my first job, they called me and say, "Don't bother, we're actually closing the studio down."
Oh my
So that was like, okay, that's how it's going to be.
This is David Hubert. David has over 2.5 decades of experience in both VFX and animation. He spent a lot of his early years at DreamWorks working across multiple projects and moved on to direct at Eidos for Deus Ex and Tomb Raider. Along the way, he discovered how remote work could revolutionize the animation industry, which led to the creation of Agora.Studio, and in turn, Agora.Community.
If we want to provide the best services, we need to attract the best talent. If we want to attract the best talent, we need to provide the best opportunities and the best conditions to work on. I would say in general, we overvalue the big master plan of how, okay, that's the roadmap and it's going to be perfect. And it's more about being opportunistic, that when there's opportunity and having the drive to do it. If we make a lot of efforts building the team, nurturing the team, solving any tensions, any problem, having a strong culture, the end result is going to be good services to our clients.
Hi, David.
Hello.
Welcome to our space, to your space.
Thank you.
We're super excited to be talking to you. I have so much to ask you. You know, shooting in the Agora space is also really amazing, and seeing how far your company has come from, like, starting like not so long ago. How long did Agora start?
Officially, we started 8-9 years ago, but we really went all in, the small team of partner quitting our day job by the end of 2019. So it's been a little more than 4 years that we're really dedicated. Okay,
insane.
let's do this for real now. Yeah, so 4 years is not that long in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, I do have a lot of Agora-specific questions that I think everybody wants to know. But before we go into it, I really wanted to talk, just so we can get in your shoes a little bit about how you started and you as a person, as an artist, yourself. Just a little bit of context on when have you always been an entrepreneur at heart?
Not really. I mean, my parents are, so it was probably somewhere in my DNA until eventually it started to emerge. Yeah. But no, I would say, pretty normal, average upbringing. As far as I remember, I always wanted to go in cinema, but in the 80s it was more like about prosthetic and explosion and this and that, so it was more like special effects in cinema, but nothing related to CG. Then went to in graphic design. That was great, had a great time, but I didn't see myself doing graphic design for the rest of my career. This is where I learned about 3D, so applied, made it in a 3D school, and I would say, compared to some of the great school around the world and the great education that we have now, I'd say back then I was mainly just learning the software. So, okay, now you know how to do CG as a generalist, and good luck. There's 12 studios in Montreal. Send your, resume, or not even resume, send your VHS tape of what you did as a student, put it in the mail and cross your fingers and hope that some studio are going to call back eventually. Been hired as a lighting artist for my first job, which made sense because when I was at school, I became very rapidly quite good in look dev, so lighting, rendering, compositing, and all that. The day I was supposed to start my first job, they called me and say, "Don't bother, we're actually closing the studio down."
Oh,
so that was like, okay, that's how it's going to be. And literally the next week, there's another studio that called me and say, "Hey, we need animators." So I was like, "Sure, I know how to use the software to make things move, so I can do it." I was pretty terrible at it, but back then most of us were, so that was fine. And that's how I became an animator. The first studio needed one, so it's not this backstory that, always imagine myself as being an animator and drawing this or that. No, I just stumbled upon it. And even if I sucked at it at first, it was still the only experience that I had. So the second studio hired me as an animator, and the third as well. And that's how I became an animator. Always wanted to travel abroad, so I went to work in France and in Australia, in London. Eventually, go work in LA at DreamWorks for 4 years. This is where I started to do many other things, directing a little bit on the side my own project, starting to teach as well. Then came back to Montreal. I've been a cinematic director and animation director at Eidos Montreal. And from there, this is where I started to hire freelancers in remote, eventually helped other studios to do the same.
Whoa, you're going too fast. You eventually started hiring people remote. What does that even mean? What kind of situation where you're at that you needed to hire someone remote?
I'm going to come back in time almost 20 years to 2004. 2004, I'm coming back from France. I worked on an animated feature over there at a curious studio called Studio Synthèse. It was a magic roundabout. And when I came back, they hired me in remote to work on a trailer for another feature. And I remember back then, at the end of this mandate, I was like, oh my God, we can work in remote, which means that we can create a virtual studio, which means that the future is going to be we all work remotely if we want to.
So you just had an epiphany. You did one job remote and you're
I
like,
literally remember,
works.
I remember the moment where I was in the car at where we were going when I got this epiphany. Never thought I would do it. I just thought that, hey, this is where our industry is going because I've been able to do it. It worked well for the studio. It worked well for me. Why not? So then fast forward 15 years. And now I'm in a situation in Eidos, or maybe 12 years, that I'm like, okay, well, shortage of labor in Montreal. The market is red hot because, game is on fire and VFX is on fire and animated feature is on fire. Difficult to find talent. So, remembering my experience at Animate of teaching online and previous experience as freelancing in remote. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to explore this possibility, made it work. I was like, okay, I don't see myself relying on one or the other. I see the future being you have a core team that's going to be either on site or staff, but that's your core team, and you're going to complement this core team with whoever around the world has the expertise and the skills that you're looking for. So it's kind of this idea. So for me, even before Agora, I was like, okay, this is where it's just that I was doing it as an employee of a studio. And it's, again, almost by accident that other studio would call me, hey, where do you find your resources? I know, everyone is already busy. But if you're open to remote freelancing, I can give you a few tips that led to a few tips to I'm going to find you the people that I'm going to help set up things to if you offer me to pay a little bit for it, I'm, for consulting, and one thing led to another and started to have some synergy with a little growing group that was leading, that was providing those services until it became unsustainable to have both a day job and this side thing.
Interesting. So it was more organic sort of evolution of it.
There was no big master plan.
It wasn't like you were sitting there and you were like, I need my own company. Let's do that. It was kind of
and I think that many aspiring entrepreneurs like, okay, what is my, what is the big idea that I want to invest in? And most of the time you just end up solving a problem for yourself and like, oh, I became quite good at solving this problem for myself. Maybe others have the same problem. And then you can kind of sell your expertise to kind of solve this. So it was really like, because at Eidos, I was, I always saw myself being either a film director or cinematic director or, having a creative role that would be fulfilling, and I had it. So I was not looking to leave this. It's just that it happened, and eventually I was like, okay, either I go all in that or I just let it go. And I think it was just the fear of if I don't do it, someone else will, and I'm going to regret that I didn't do it. So I think it was really the fear of missing out more than anything that led me to, okay, let's go all in.
So David created Agora because he had FOMO.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
We can make a T-shirt out of this.
I think everybody would buy this T-shirt.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I have a little bit of an entrepreneur sort of mindset myself, which is a blanket statement. It's kind of weird to say, but I do constantly think about that stuff, and I maybe overthink it a little bit. It's a little bit maybe more simple than I do.
Yeah.
Think about it.
I would say anyone that has those aspirations should try it, and probably today is easier than ever, because if you're, sometimes you think yourself as an entrepreneur that, okay, I need to build a company and I need to be, no, you can be a one-man or one-woman army that's just going to offer your service and not as an employee, but as a freelancer. And maybe one thing is going to lead to another. There's one contract that is too big just for you to take, so maybe you have a friend or peers that are willing to help, and then gradually you can small a big team, and that's going to emerge from that. So I would say in general, we overvalue the big master plan of how, okay, that's the roadmap and it's going to be perfect. And it's more about be, opportunistic, that when there's opportunity and having the drive to do it. Everyone has a lot of good ideas, is the minority that actually execute on those ideas for whatever reasons.
So currently running Agora as you do you you sort of gave up that artistic side of yourself. Did you ever, did this also happen gradually, or is it something that you were like, once you made the jump from Eidos to full-time Agora, were you like, all right, I don't have to, animate anymore, or animation direct anymore, or what?
I would say the biggest part of this transition was actually between DreamWorks and Eidos. Because I went from being just a character animator, even a lead animator, but moving to a director position, there was some creativity in it, but it was 95% management and 5% creativity.
Right.
So this jump was already started there. I'd find outlet outside of work to be creative. I do a lot of music. I play a lot of guitar. When we're on vacation, I do a lot of photography. Sometimes I still do a little bit of video and video editing. So I keep the bare minimum to kind of keep my creative mind satisfied. But yeah, for me, it's all a question of season, and I'm a season that I way less creative than I'd like to be. At the same time, building and organizing a company, there's a lot of creativity needed. For me, creativity is basically you have a blank page and you need to create something, or there's something that doesn't work and you need to make it work. It's problem solving. So when you have this creative background and you apply it to problem solving in business or whatever else, it feels like the outcome is completely different, but the mental process is kind of similar. So there's sometimes I am able to resolve situation where I find the same fulfillment that when I was creating an animation and I figured out, okay, that's the acting that I'm going for, that's the blocking that I'm going for. So it's different, but it's not like I feel that I completely let this part go. It's just that it's applied in a different way. I still miss as an animator or any creative, when you have when you have your shutter proof and you're like, look the world, I did this. You can all look at this. That's something that you have much less when you're. So the satisfaction of having a final product that you can show the world and then move on is something that.
Look at where we are right now. This is the product.
I know. I know, but it's not the same thing. I'd say, hey, I crafted this. It's more like a big group effort, so which is different, but it's fine.
I would say it's even like, I don't know, I'm gonna get a little cheesy here, but I would say it's beautiful. Honestly, Agora, like the way we'll talk more about it later, but one thing that I think is really interesting that I want to kind of delve on with you is you didn't do it alone, right? So you had your strong connections and people that you were relying on when making this kind of jump. And I every time I speak to people, I mean, I'm working at Agora now, for context, for people who don't know, and I've been talking to everybody, like interviewing people from the team, and I always ask them, what is it that, why Agora? Why is it that you work here? And it's funny because and the first word or the first couple of words that come out of their mouth is always David.
Good.
And then I have proof. I'll show you later. I'm not just saying that. I think it's hilarious. And then they're like, oh, I take it back. Don't tell them I said that. And then they will say something else. So you have this, I guess, I don't know how to call it, is a talent or a quality or something that you have been fostering throughout the years, even before starting Agora, where you're making sure that you're making strong connections with people and taking the time to do that. It is time consuming to do that. It's not like, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did?
Yeah, I would say there's just a few things that are super important in any big project, like building a company and surrounding yourself with a strong team is definitely among the top 3 most important thing. I would say I've always, kind of, we're talking about where the industry is going, remote work, and that was like 20 years from that. So I've often live in the future in my mind, and I create compelled vision, and I kind of can create a path of, hey, imagine if that was the future and we would be doing this. So I think it's a mix of being able to articulate a vision of the future, what mission we could have, and then kind of be having some salesman skills to be able to motivate people to kind of follow and embark in this journey. What helps, I think, for many people that you spoke to is I'm coming from a creative and artistic background myself, so it's almost like it's not like I'm a lawyer or a banker or a finance person that's starting a studio. No, it's a studio by animators, by artists, and I think that it felt in our DNA. So for best and for worse, because there's some things in hindsight like, oh my god, what were we thinking? This is not how you create and run a studio. But I think that on a human aspect, for many of the technicians and artists that we're working with, they feel that this is my tribe, this is led how and it's very much when we started, many of the motivations like, hey, how can we, if we're to create a new studio, yes, remote this and that, but what are we trying to solve? What is the space that we want to create for ourselves first? And if we like it, probably everyone that is like us, that is creative, technical, driven, are also going to like. So I'd say that's another part. So having the vision, explain what we're trying to do, try to motivate, inspire people, and I think this is all part of how we motivate peers to join us. And at some point in the beginning is difficult because no one knows Agora and what is this crazy idea and this and that, so it's almost like eventually when you have more and more that are joining in, and they can assess that this is actually exactly what they said they would be, and this is great for those reasons, and with those are the challenges, but it's always communicated openly. Eventually you don't need to preach yourself, others do it for you, which is usually the best way to motivate anyone. So I think it's a mix of many different things that
so we're all just puppets of the Agora. We're just self-motivated puppets.
Well, there's another thing that at first we, because of freelancing and because of freelancing in remote, we, it's not like, okay, here's your employment contract. Now we're, not that we own you, but there's many corporations that this is almost how they feel that they're treating people. As for us, it's like, okay, if it's a relationship that we want to maintain, we're going to make sure that on the next project you're still interested. It was always, let's make sure to create a good chemistry on this project because we'd like you to embark on the next one and the next one and the next one. So not taking anything for granted and working really hard to build strong connection with those that we wanted to continue to work with was not necessarily by design, but just, it just happened naturally because of 100% freelancing for so long with no guarantee that anyone would stay past the end of their contract. So another incentives to be,
to be better,
make extra effort to being very, open and kind with everyone.
So not only did you have the vision to create your own sort of more remote, like futuristic style of working for artists that would give studios more range to find talent, but you also were thinking about how to build like the atmosphere or the right circumstances for people to be happy, to feel heard, to work on stuff they like to work on, to create this. And I see so much effort from inside of Agora to like bridge the gap between people and gaps that are not just there because we're remote, gaps that exist even on studios when we're working in person. So like, is that coming from you, or is this Jacob? Is this someone else that's the genius behind?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's coming from me. I think it's coming from this group that started. So yes, it's everyone, all the partners that when we started, but it's the people that we surrounded ourselves with. I think that we had a seed that had all of you mentioned in its DNA that started to grow and grow and grow, and as it was growing, it was attracting those kind of people. I think there a few years back we literally agreed that what matters the most for us is everyone that we're working. If we want to provide the best services, we need to attract the best talent. If we want to attract the best talent, we need to provide the best opportunities and the best conditions to work on. Now, this is very aspirational. We're not saying that we do offer or we're the best at everything, but we aspire to become the best at everything. So if we make a lot of efforts building the team, nurturing the team, solving any tensions, any problem, having a strong culture, the end result is going to be good services to our clients. If we offer good services to the clients, the business is going to grow. If it grows, more revenues, which means that we can invest even more in the team and cool project and internal project that we can do. So starting with this, yes, of course, it's important to fulfill the needs of the clients. But for us, if we have to put in order of priority, this is important, but this is not the number one priority. The number one priority is to make sure that everyone that we're working with, that we're there to support them. If we do, we'll be able to work with the best. If we work with the best, we'll have happy clients.
It seems like a no-brainer thing, but it's not necessarily how things are applied.
Well, because
normally.
everyone will agree with that, but on a daily basis, when there's a little crisis, it will default in a different. So this is why culture is becoming so important, because you need to codify that those are the things that are important, and they are important in good times and they're important in bad times. Because it's all easy and fun when everything goes well, but when there's crisis, it's really where you see that, okay, are you still going to favor, the side of those that you're working with when it's not really going well, or you're going to say, okay, time out for just a few weeks. It's going to suck for everyone for a few weeks, but don't worry, we'll get back to our culture afterwards.
Which is basically how everyone defaults to.
I think it's just human nature. When you're in crisis mode, you just, and for us, I mean, maybe because we still see ourselves as a big startup, it's still very much driven by the partners that have this in their DNA. So it's not like it's a committee of a committee of a committee that just feel, what does the corporation think that we should do in this decision? Is that, no, we can make the call, because we're still close enough from the production team. We're not in the details anymore, but we're close enough to everyone and still have, the authority to make any call that we want. So we're still at this sweet spot, and as we're growing, that's going to remain our biggest challenge of how do we maintain this. If eventually there's thousands of people that are working with Agora, how do we maintain this culture? Because now it's not, there's no way that we'll be able to know how is this team behaving with this team and this individual with this individual. So that will become a challenge. Yeah,
like I guess we were talking about this earlier, like as the company grows, it just becomes more challenging to hold to any of those values. And
which is usually where policies come in, where bureaucracy come in, because you need to. So culture for me is a very high level codification of how do we treat each other. Like honesty would be one of the values, for instance, but we're not making a policy that in this situation you have to do it exactly this way, because usually with the more people you have, the bigger the corporation, the more policies and the more bureaucracy are going to come in, because there's been this problematic situation that needed to be solved, but to be solved, there's also a new policy that's been added, and another one, and there's policies are adding up, but there's usually no mechanism to remove them, which means that they're just building and building and building to the point that you have a recipe to do everything, which means that it's kind of removing the ownership of people. And this is when we're talking about, big corporation with a lot of red tapes. Well, yeah, this is entropy kind of leads to this. So you need to make a lot of effort if you want to still provide the autonomy and empower everyone in our organization where you have thousands of people to take care of.
And speaking of autonomy, you in particular, I have some experience. My experience is limited, but I have some experience in other studios, and I noticed that Agora, in particular, is very. How do I say that word? Like, you can basically run the show how you want to run the show when you're working for an Agora project. There aren't nobody's holding your hand, nobody's breathing down your neck. You're deciding how things are going. Obviously, there's a little bit of there's check-ins here and there and all that, but you're and I find that you have an incredible amount of trust on the people that you work with. How do you sleep at night? I feel like I would have trouble not checking in. There's no little camera you can check to make sure that things are going okay, or how do you do it?
I think that just by nature, if I speak just for myself specifically, how do I sleep at night? I'm not a very anxious person. Okay. You might have noticed. so it takes a lot to get me to think about stuff during the night. No, I would say I trust people by default until they lose my trust, and it's not the other way around. This is also why we have an entire system, and we put a lot of effort to make sure that we have the right people that kind of fit. And the right people, it's not just the individual, is what is the relationship between this individual and our culture and our team and what we're aspiring to do. We often envision Agora as an ecosystem. It's not a very top-down organization. It's, yes, we have a way to do things, coming back to culture, those are 10 values that are important to us. This is how we behave between each other. This is how we behave with the client. This is how we deal with situation. But we do rely on everyone's, autonomy and decision making, and sometimes it's going to not be what we hope it would have been, and sometimes there'll be some failure, and sometimes there'll be some calibration and adjustment, but it's rare that let's say a mistake from one of our leader will lead to a catastrophe. We're going to miss a deadline, we're going to spend more than expected, we will have to let someone go. Again, none of this is, critical in general. So, again, we have to make decisions. Are we going to create a perfect recipe and ask everyone to follow this recipe? Or are we going to provide broad guidelines and hire people that we think that fit with what we are creating and let them run with it? And then over time, calibrate, and might be, okay, well, this person needs to be a little bit more control or needs a bit more support because maybe not the best manager. Amazing technician and creative, but needs help with management. Okay, let's add some management support. This other person, amazing manager and technician, need a little bit more support in terms of creativity. Let's put maybe a second supervisor or a super strong senior team that will have that the amount of creative artistic feedback that will be required will be very minimal. Then you can just lead the team and make sure that we'll hit the deadlines. We're trying to not to be too precious, and perfection is the enemy of good. So if we're everything needs to be perfect, no, we know that we're going to mess up a lot, but at the same time, we have a system that if anyone mess up, it's not the end of the day. We can very rapidly be aware of it and provide the support needed when it happens. So it's not like we're reckless and we're just, anyone can come in and you have full freedom and do whatever you want. No, it's all invisible because it's all, a digital online infrastructure, but there are systems in place to make sure that it's not going to happen.
You mean I can't start animating a brand new show and nobody will tell me anything? I can just do anything I want? Yeah. All right. So you fully trust your team, and that's amazing. How do you how would you handle a situation if it was going south for from a client perspective, not so much from a teammate perspective? And I ask this because I feel like in this situation in particular, with Agora, there's you're always sort of solution driven rather than focusing on what the issue is. So I wanted to just get your opinion on what how you would handle that.
I would say usually it's only three things. Either, well, I'm simplifying a lot, but either the problem is on our side, either the problem is on the client side, or either there's a misunderstanding about the what needs to be provided. If it's on our side, pretty rapidly we'll look, okay, what are we, do we need more resources? Do we need different resources? Does this person needs more support? Is this person, in hindsight, not the best casting? So we'll need to make adjustment internally. If it's on the client side, what we can do is limited, but we can have, and again, it depends on the relationship that we have with the client. But we can address and have a candid conversation with them to say, look, right now there's a problem, and we feel that the source of the problem is this, let's say, random example, like a creative director with unrealistic demand because not being aware or even caring about the contractual reality of so then we can have a discussion with the client. And sometimes it's just calibration. I mean, many times we agree on, hey, we're going to work at a quota of 3 seconds a week of animation for feature animation quality. I5, okay, we're on it. That's extremely subjective. Yeah. So sometimes it's just like, okay, time out, let's reevaluate what is possible here. So it's always a question of, okay, where is the problem coming from? And then let's go address this. I would say over time we got way better with our contractual agreement with the clients. We're in a situation that like, oh, okay, we kind of fucked up in the negotiation. That's on us. We're going to lose money on this contract. It's fine, as long as the team is not suffering too much from it. So let's pay for more resources, but we want to preserve the sanity of the team and the relationship with the client. So that's fine. But yeah, other times we need to do some recasting internally, and we're trying to never blindside anyone from it. Having kind conversation, and not only sometime it was not the right casting, but sometime
circumstances.
Circumstances. Yeah. I mean, even myself, I can see myself as a character animator that sometimes I would just knock it out of the park. And other time that I would struggle for 3-4 weeks on the shot of like, what is going on? What is wrong with my brain? Why am I not able to figure this thing? So there's so many variables that, isolating where the problem is coming from, and then addressing, having honest and kind communication about it, and then finding solutions.
This speaks to what you were mentioning before about being a company by artists for artists. Because what you just said, it makes complete sense, but maybe somebody who has not been in our shoes would not have that instinct to know, like, it's it's also circumstances.
That's definitely one of our secret weapon that everyone from the core of partners, we have experience in the industry. We know how it's running. So I've been an artist myself. I've been supervising artists, I've been teaching to artists, I've been hiring artists, I've been dealing with clients. I've been on every different side of the fence. So I can have conversation with any one of those, and I can empathize and understand their perspective. So it's not like, which is very difficult when you say you're a good businessman or businesswoman, but you don't know exactly what is done, what your team is doing. But when you understand, you don't need to understand the detail, but you understand the logic of, oh, okay, of course, if we're in this, you kind of very rapidly have a big picture of, oh, okay, I see the big picture, here's what we can do to address it.
And I wonder, I think one of the biggest hurdles for me thinking about, if I were to go put myself in the shoes of someone who wants to start their own studio, thinking about like, where the heck do I find a client that wants me to work for them? For you, was it just word of mouth?
Yeah, for me it was just word of mouth. I was already 12, 15 years in my career, so had a lot of, again, we're in Montreal, so, had a lot of friends in other studio that asked, hey, I'm looking for resources, can you help? And that was the beginning of a seed. And then after that, it was purely word of mouth. There was enough studio that were needing resources. But that's my own experience, it's Agora's experience, and it's difficult to replicate in different circumstances. I would say for anyone, I mean, nowadays I'm coming back to when we started. Say I got out of school, had 12 VHS steps that I sent to the 12 studio in Montreal, sent them by mail, hope that the address was actually not messed up when I wrote it, and waited. Yeah. We can agree that in 2024 there's much better ways to get known. So anyone that starts, again, just start small, have experience, post a lot of your work online, make connections, be part of communities. One connection is going to lead to another. You can have a first contract and then a second one, and if you're doing a good job, you'll have little word of mouth that is going on. Eventually, if you get more and more demand, you can actually choose, which is great. Then you can, increase your rate and actually choose the project that inspire you. Eventually, if it's even more, maybe you can have a little team of you. So I think this is how the industry is evolving anyway. The massive corporation with thousands of people are slowly being replaced by mid-size studio and super small team and individuals. The ecosystem is going to be way more fragmented than it used to be. So that's I would say for anyone that has this entrepreneur DNA in them, try it. At least if you hate it, you'll know that you have tried it, because there's a comfort of a steady salary and, knowing that, you're fully supported with all the benefits that is coming from being an employee. And therefore, many, this is a peace of mind that entrepreneurship is not going to provide you. It's going to provide a lot of other things, but this is probably not among those. So if for you, where you are with your life, with maybe if you need to support your family and other things,
did you have to go a few months without like any kind of income at the time when you made the leap?
No, because for the first 4 years, this is why I was doing it on the evening and weekends. Okay. So as I was working full time, I was doing Agora part time. And by the moment that I made the jump was at a moment that say, okay, we can now afford to give us the bare minimum of what we can, which is way less than what we're making in studios, but that's bare minimum that we can pay the bill. And for me, it was a way more sane and efficient way to do it, because when you go all in all of a sudden, and you have, okay, we're doing this project, but in 3 months from now, we need to pay the rent. We need to make money and we need to make rent, or you have this loan from the bank that we need to start to repay it. And when you have any kind of financial pressure coming from the outside, it's not the best setting to make the best decisions. Yeah. Now you make decisions based on how much money you're going to charge and make, which is something at first that we didn't had to worry about. So a pay cut when I made the jump, but to a point I was like still comfortable even if I have a family to take care of, with the hope that it would work, but the assurance that if it doesn't work, I can find another job quite rapidly. So if after 6 months it's a disaster, I can probably with a few more months find another good job. So I'm not too stressed, because we are again in a time in our industries in Montreal that was just booming. So it was not too stressful.
Yeah, and the name Agora itself, you didn't stop at just Agora.Studio. So I wanted to sort of clarify this for everybody, because it's even confusing for me.
Yeah.
Agora is a few different things. It's not just a studio. I don't know if you could call it a studio, but if it's not just a community of artists, freelancers. It's also now evolving into becoming like a more educational community or hub. and there's two different names that are kind of the big branches of it. It's Agora.Studio, which is more like just the animation services that you provide. And then, well, not just animation, there's also other services now. So there's rigging, modeling, basically everything in the pipeline. And then there is Agora.Community, which is pretty much all of the stuff that includes frame by frame, even the anim challenges that we do. What the heck? How did you have, like, what kind of future do you, like, did you already picture this when you started Agora.Studio? Is this the future you were living in that you were sort of, like, hoping for?
So the name Agora came out way before Agora started, and was at a time that I had the aspiration of creating an online school. And the full name was Agora VFX, because this online school, I was already a teacher for another online school in animation. And at the time, there was a big need for everything else than animation. So I was like, okay, I'm going to create another school that provides everything but animation. So that's where the Agora, place of gathering to exchange idea, and VFX for everything that is other than animation. But that was back, I think, in 2011 or 2012, so way before. So when we started this freelancing, we're like, hey, we already have a company in the name, so let's just reuse it. And why? I mean, the first line that we see on the website is a global network of talent, and this is how we see Agora. So we don't see Agora just as a animation studio or game developer, this or that. It's a philosophy, and it's a system that there's a lot of talent in the world, and any work that can be done efficiently remotely fit into this big idea that we have of connecting everyone. Again, if you go on the website, if you see the little world with all the connection, this is the connection in between. So we're kind of creating this platform with everyone gets connected from wherever they are. In the world. So if we're talking about a studio, well, we're connecting talent with each other, but we're connecting them with studios as well that actually needs those workforce to be able to do those production. It's just the same mentality. So Agora.Community is almost coming back to the original idea of creating online schools, just and now that it's 12 years later, our idea of what is the online school 2.0 evolved a lot, so it's quite different.
So why separate it into two, like between Agora.Studio and Agora.Community? Because
there are two different things with two different audience. Agora.Studio is really for client studio that needs to services for their production. Agora.Community is for the community, for artists that needs to, meet peers, have mentorship, have education. So it's almost, and even in the first website, we had a hard time to describe Agora because it seemed like sometimes we're speaking to clients and other time we're speaking to artists and this, and it felt like what are we? So eventually it was like, okay, there's a split. This is the professional, we're providing services side, and this is the community that is for artists and technicians side. So this is where kind of the separation happened, which was just making more sense. It was clearing things up. So when I'm speaking to potential clients, I don't necessarily have to also explain, and we're also doing education and animation challenges and frame by frame this and that. It might not be relevant at all with their own needs, as potentially for artists that want just to learn animation. I won't necessarily have to cover what everything Agora.Studio is doing, other than it's behind the Agora.Community perspective. So it's just a way to kind of separate things in different bucket when we describe them, and at the same time, it's going to be two different websites because it doesn't make sense to have this. So it's just when you had all of these things and you're like, do we want to have like one LinkedIn page? Well, no, again, it's like two different things. So it was just a natural separation.
Okay. Yes. And is there like a vision that you have for the Agora.Community side of things, like that you hope that it'll evolve into?
Yeah. Many things. I mean, first of all, I think that education is evolving, so maybe there's some deformation there of coming from, being in video game for a while and a lot of different industry, but also education. So I think that there's a way to make learning and training way more fun. And I know that, gamification is a term that's been way overused. but there's ways to motivate better than what we're doing right now in terms of learning skill. There's also, a reality now that anyone, I would have killed when I was at school to have private mentoring from a supervisor at Disney, for instance. Well, today it's a reality and it's already happening, but everyone are kind of doing it a little bit individually. There's those online schools as well. But that's the idea of creating a community where you have both aspiring artists and students and graduates and juniors and mid to the top veteran, and create a system that all of them can interact. So sometimes it's going to be through mentoring, sometimes it's through performing assignment with gamification system that's going to allow you to level up and see your progress and share your progress with others. Eventually maybe team up to work on little projects. We often, I think it's a few years back that we had the conversation that eventually we see a future that all of the shares of a project, instead of being all in the hands of whoever paid for the project, is going to be redistributed to the artists that work on the project. That's something that already happened with stock options for company, but rarely for production specifically. That's something that I could see having, hey, an investor have this to invest. If anyone is interested, that's the amount of share that we could provide for that specific project. Here's our roadmap, who's interested to join. That all sounds good on paper, but you need a platform to be able to do
which,
this.
like, if I can rephrase that, you're talking about potentially artists being able to make royalties off of the work that they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that as it evolves with all the new technology and everything that we see happening. I think that the days of 100% of your income are coming from your 9 to 5 work. That's maybe in some extent it's still going to be the case, but I think it's going to be the minority. Eventually, you're going to I freelance a little bit, that's part of my income, and I also am a mentor, that's another part of my income, and I also create some educational content, and I have a bit of royalties coming from that. I participate in some challenge with pretty interesting prizes, so if I have the prize, that's potentially other income, and I'm going to participate either for free or for a very low income lower that I would charge to clients, because I'm going to have shares of this project and royalties that I'll be able to get. So it's going to be a collection of different revenue streams that is going to be provided to anyone that wants to. So that's when you kind of think about how things are slowly being fragmented more and more and more and more. It seems to me logical that it would get to this extent that even your income are going to be fragmented. Probably those that want to know, I want to simplify and just have one employer, probably still going to exist. I just don't think it's going to be the majority of our industry.
That would be amazing if we could have that. I think that the whole idea of working, like getting paid by the hour is
I think part of it could be paid per hour. Another part of it is just going to be different. And as much as for some now, it's like, oh my God, it's just so complicated to think about all of those things. I think following generation for them, it will be like just naturally this is what they're going to take for granted. So
what I find the most interesting about Agora.Community is how traditionally in our industry there's a lot of gatekeeping. People are kind of holding on to information close to the chest. They're putting an amount of dollars on a piece of information that they'll give to specific people who are willing to pay. You, on the other hand, the way that you're kind of approaching this whole thing is make it as accessible as possible. Obviously, if you're getting a one-on-one with somebody, you're using their time, so there is some compensation there. But most of the time, for most of the information that you're putting out there, or most of the I guess education that's out there, is fully accessible for anyone who wants to see it.
Yeah, I think many have a scarcity mindset, which means that it's a zero sum. If I give this, it means that this person has more, and it means that I have less. I have more of an abundance mindset in general, which means that the more that you create and you give to the world, quote unquote, which means like everyone, the more you have is, so you can call it karma, you can call it whatever you want, but I always had this mindset of, just do what feels right, and, good things will come back in return. In terms of creating educational content that we provide for free, it's not like it's completely revolutionary. It already exists. If you want to spend the time to go on YouTube and other platforms to find all of the free content, you'll find it. It's already there. One of the many missions of Agora.Community is that let's help to curate and organize information, so it's going to be easier to find it. And let's remove the annoying, if you're not subscribed to YouTube, you're going to have a 15 seconds, advertising in the beginning. So let's remove that. So let's remove the friction to get to the information, because the information is already free out there. So that was the mindset from the get-go. Let's provide as much as we can for free. And eventually, when you need mentoring, when you need one-on-one, when you need someone to take of their time to help you to grow as an artist, then yes, this is monetized, because this person needs to be paid for it. But again, when you compare this price to what some schools are charging for education that are outdated, anyone that is starting now, I would say, keep all of your money, go find all of the free content, practice, and invest in private mentoring with people that's going to spend some of their time to tell you exactly how to improve your craft. That was going to be a way better investment than any program or
I would say
diploma.
If you're spending more money than you're spending time on when you're trying to learn, then that's a red flag.
The only upside of spending too much money for your education is that you're going to take it seriously, and you'll be like, oh shit, I paid so much money that I'm going to get my shit together and do the thing. If you're able to do that without spending the money, good for you. You need those. And coming back to the gamified aspect of education, if you're able to have intrinsic motivation to be able to do it rather than extrinsic, like, oh, someone tells me to do it, or I have a deadline that I need to meet. No, if you're able to do it because you're motivated and driven to do it, that's the best way, and that's the fastest way that you're going to learn. So that's kind of a bit of the philosophy behind the education that we want to provide.
You guys have also talked about potentially starting to do internships at Agora. And what I found the most interesting is that it wouldn't be just internships for people to start working at Agora, but it would also be interns that you can, I would say rent out, but we don't actually rent people out, but you know what I mean? Like people like that you can share with other studios.
Yeah, it's not an internship that now, at the end of your internship, you're working with us. It's more an internship like, hey, maybe you finished your studies, you're at a point that, okay, I'm not hired now, what do I do? Or maybe you've been hired, but you have a lot of time on the side. So those are like group projects that will have our own supervisor that's going to guide you through this production. I mean, that's a pilot project that we're going to try, and we're going to adjust along the way. That's for sure. For us, of course, if the goal, if we're talking just about Agora.Studio, is that through this process, we're going to find golden nuggets of amazing artists that we would not have found any other way. So, okay, that's, if we want to say, hey, what is the business plan? That's not a business plan, but that's just an outcome of, we're going to find good talent in there. There's also the word of mouth. If someone had an amazing internship and now they have great, shot for their own show reel, and that helped them to find a job elsewhere, that's good, positive word of mouth that is just fueling the brand and the culture overall. And it's also an opportunity for our own supervisors to have even more supervising experience. So it's one thing to supervise seniors. It's another thing to supervise students or juniors. So our own team with just practicing their leadership skills is another good practice. So those are just 3 examples, but when we thought about the internship, we had a list of, okay, those are 10 good reasons to do it. So let's announce it, and then we're going to try it, and we're going to adjust and see what it evolves into.
I'm looking at you here. You're sitting across from me, and you're so level-headed, and you're like, you have no, like you said, you're not a very anxious person. You're super, but you're juggling so many things because at the same time you also have a family, and how do you do this? Like, what are some of the things? I think Virginie mentioned that you might have a very good morning routine.
I do actually. It's a result from the pandemic in the beginning, COVID, like, okay, how do we deal with this? So we have all this time at home, so it kind of was a moment to, for me, it was a moment to start to do things that I told myself I would do for a long time. This being said, I've been this level-headed, I don't know if you can say it, way before my morning routine, so I think it's contributing. But yes, morning routine, coffee, meditation, physical training, journaling, and then showering, and then I'm starting my day. So that's a 2 hours that I have all the right, hormones, or the serotonin and the dopamine and this and that, and it's all. So I just make sure that I start my day on a good foot with a good level of energy. As for not being too concerned about life and things in general, I would say I was always like this, so it's just like how I am.
DNA.
I don't know why.
You were just blessed.
It is what it is. But yeah, and the very few time that I'm anxious about something for whatever reason, I empathize with those that need to deal with this on a daily basis, because I'm like, oh my God, this feeling sucks.
Oh yeah.
I don't like it at all. For the very few times where it happens, I'm like, okay, that's not. I wouldn't want more than 15 minutes of this feeling, and I know that some have to deal with that on a daily basis. So it's and like many things, when you start something in the beginning, you can be a bit more anxious. I remember the first time I gave a class to 5 students online, I was stressed out for an hour before the first time I run my first meeting at Eidos with 6 people. Like, oh my God, how am I going to, run this for an hour? And same thing with a presentation in front of 100 people, then a presentation in front of 300. But I would say I always force myself to get out of my comfort zone, and over time it helps you to, there's not many things now that if I was trying something completely different, probably it would be the case. But within what I have to do within Agora, I really don't feel a high level of stress. If anything, the bigger challenge is boredom, because there's a lot of tasks that I have to do. And I'm like, God, kill me now. I don't want to do this. I know it's going to take me 3 hours, and every minute of it is not going to be enjoyable, but I have to do it. So sometimes I'm like, okay, let's go get another coffee. Okay, let's adjust the music. Let's adjust the lighting. Okay, let's do this, because I'm really not looking forward to. So boredom has to be managed more than stress, that's for sure.
Interesting. All right. So you definitely work out in the mornings and you meditate, which is awesome. I should try that.
Yeah, meditation is it's an interesting experiment when you never tried it, because I was under the assumption that, hey, you just close your eyes and do nothing for an hour, it's going to be relaxing. And then you close your eyes, you do nothing, and then all of your voice in your head is going to scream at you and like, oh my God, what is going on? What is this mess in my head right now? And then you realize that, oh, okay, that's actually the exercise of quieting all of those voices down and take.
Did you have to do it I guess you had to do it a few times before you were able to quiet the voices down, or is it?
Oh, it's still an ongoing.
It's still an ongoing thing.
For sure. And I don't know if it ever stops. It would be like training and say, one day I'll be able to do push-ups and do them forever and not being tired. No, there's a point that you're going to be physically tired. No, it's just in the beginning, it's almost impossible, and it's very not enjoying. So a few months from this is not fun at all to, okay, this is actually starts to be fun and relaxing. And yeah, it's like physical training. It's just like something that you don't train eventually like, okay, I'm in shape now, I can stop training. It's like, no, that's just something that you do now. That is just good for, mental resilience. At the same time, it helps with all the boring stuff that I need to do. It's physically uncomfortable, it's not fun. I'm still going to do it. I don't want to do it, I'm still going to do it, and on and on and on and on. So it kind of starts the day of, okay, there's plenty of things that I need to do today. I'm not looking forward to do them. I'm going to do them anyway, because this is what needs to be done, not what I want to do at every moment. So that's probably biggest challenge when you're an entrepreneur and you have no one to answer to, or you're going to be able to discipline yourself and do the things that needs to be done, or are you constantly going to procrastinate and do the things that are fun to you, not the things that are that needs to be done. So that's
one thing I forgot to mention earlier about Agora.Studio is you guys are also working on your own IPs, right?
Yeah.
And I say you guys, I mean we guys, because I'm also working on them. I wanted to see, like, are you scratching an itch there? Are you, or is it like more strategic for the company to grow a certain way?
I'll say definitely scratching an itch. I think there's some point when we were talking about stress and boredom, that I think that at some point we needed that. Okay, we're going to suffer this period of time, but on the other side, we're going to work on our own fun, creative stuff. So I think that for a period of time, we needed kind of this beacon on the other side to keep ourselves motivated. So we talked about it for a long period of time before we did anything. And then eventually we start to think, well, okay, maybe there's also, a business model there. It's fine to provide services, but would be great if eventually we can also be paid by investors or distributors to work on our own project. And yes, there's going to be shares and this and that and all complicated stuff that we'll need to deal with later. But maybe it could be a good extension, because let's say eventually there's a downturn in different industry, or all of a sudden all the studio figure out how to not needing Agora because they know exactly how to find the right resources and have the right platform. Well, if we have our own IP, then we can continue to work. So there was also a plan to let's mitigate the risk and do more than just one thing, because if you just provide this service and this service is not needed, then what? There was a diversification idea. Also decided that we can make those fun creative projects that people within our team are going to be motivated to work in. So maybe it can help with recruiting and retention. We often have gap in between projects. So what do we do with our team that are in between projects? Well, we have those side projects that they could. So eventually it just started to, again, not one main reason, but 12 good reasons to do it. And eventually just saying like, okay, now we have to do it, because it's never an urgency or a top priority, but we need at some point to make it happen. So
okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, not to say too much about it because a lot of it hasn't been released, but it's gonna be it's looking pretty cool and it's pretty fun. Yeah. You guys are also sort of focusing on doing stuff in Unreal a lot, which is interesting because you're also kind of innovating as you go, trying to figure out more more efficient ways of doing what we've been doing for forever. Yeah,
we're definitely open-minded, and we're often sometimes laughing of studios that are still using software that have been that the company is not even supporting anymore, and you're still using them a decade later because your expertise is. So it's a way to constantly ask yourself, okay, we're used to this tool, but is it still the best tool? Is it still the best tool? Of course, in the case of Unreal, there's been a massive effort from Unreal in the past few years with the Maker Grant and other projects to take different part of the industry that was not necessarily for game development. I think there's many studios that are discovering, okay, Unreal is great to do this, not completely mature to do this, and this. But for us, so there are some studios, let's say if they're just doing animation feature, do you still to do you want to do it all in Unreal? Maybe not, because it's great at many things, but not at everything. For a studio that Agora that does a lot of cinematic work as well in video games, so we kind of have this expertise of animation in the animated feature and cinematic, and everything that is in video game more and more it's going to be in Unreal, so it makes sense for us to develop this expertise. So yeah, if we do a short film and we do it in Unreal and we have to develop tools, all of those tools can then be leveraged to be more efficient at doing cinematic work for client in the engine. So for us, the big picture made a lot of sense to use Unreal for it. And we're also, Epic is a great client with Agora. We have great relationship with them. Many personal friends and connection that ended up going to work there as well. So we have a special relationship with Epic as well. So it all made sense for us to invest time and resources to kind of include Unreal in our own pipeline.
So, and it all goes back to like client relationships, right? Or relationships in general, I think. But a common theme that I'm hearing from you right now is that you're incredibly like flexible. I don't want to say chameleon, but you are able to like pivot and change, and nothing is really set in stone. And I think you mentioned it earlier already, how you were not necessarily like holding on to like a specific vision, but there is a beacon that you're following, and if you can get 80% of the way there, that'll be enough. That's such a kind of a fresh look or perspective on things. I think it's not as common as we think.
Yeah, it's definitely a go with the flow mentality. Like, we can have perfect master plan, but we do not control the environment in which this master plan will be applied. So why bother? So this is why this analogy of there's a beacon over there and let's find a way to get there. But, if we lost too much on the right, it's still there, so we can still, it's more a compass than a roadmap. And especially in our industry, what we know now is completely different than what we knew 5, 10, 15 years ago. So it's more, again, this is how we do things in general. This is the team that we want to surround ourselves with, and we're going to manage the circumstances as they are changing. And especially in our industry, it's changing so much right now that we have to be adaptable, and we have to be flexible, and we're trying to be anti-fragile as much as we can, meaning that, hey, if there's a big crisis in the industry, maybe we'll be affected, but we'll be affected so much less than every other studio that in the end is going to be to our benefit so somehow. So sounds really good on paper. Most corporations in general have a very hard time to do this, because that's easy to do when you're 12 people, almost impossible when you get to many hundreds. So this is kind of the mentality. And even with Agora's growth, we're often thinking that, a village often split anywhere between 150 and 200. By the time that you're not able to recognize everyone in the tribe, this is usually where infighting starts, and then it becomes 2 tribes, and then they're growing, and it becomes 2 and 2. So maybe Agora is not going to be this massive thousands people, but it's going to be Agora Games and Agora Animation and Agora VFX, or maybe it's going to be Agora North America and Agora Europe and Agora Asia, or maybe it's going to be a different way to split things up. But again, this idea of probably an ecosystem, a different group that are all sharing the same tools, the same platform, the same culture, this and that, but that will be able to operate individually. With
maintain the size that is manageable. Yeah,
exactly.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's no business school book that are going to teach this, and maybe it's a terrible idea, but for now, this is kind of how we try to think of how can we solve this problem of not becoming this big corporation that's going to be completely inefficient.
Or even just lose the culture, because that's kind of one of the things that's the biggest worry. I don't think think efficiency is, well, at least in my perspective, in yours definitely efficiency is important, but in my perspective is more losing the culture and just becoming too big to, for you to be aware of what's happening and.
Yeah, and the culture is a work in progress. You can keep it like perfectly well for 20 years, and then within 3 years, it's all, gets off.
Do you have like things that you learned from your experience in the animation industry that you have like you really wanted to change that you're applying towards the Agora initiatives? Like specifically some things or?
I mean, if we go into specific, there's the obvious that, I've always lived fairly close to my work, but I had peers that were doing 3 hours of driving in a day. So that's definitely one of the things that we wanted to fix with remote work, or having to relocate all of your family in another country to be able to work there. So I would say just the remote part, there was already some things that we wanted to fix there. If we come back to the culture, we've all been in places where you don't need that many toxic people to create a shitty work environment. So really creating an environment that, people will actually look forward to come to work, even if work is from home. So having a system, I've been in studios that, they had strong core values and most of them were followed, but you just need one person with enough influence to just you feel that can this person fit into this culture, and you just need one person that is there to screw everything up. So how do we build system to make sure that if there's something that doesn't work, we know quite rapidly, and we can address the situation by not ignoring the problem or not having it in our blind spot, but being aware of it and do something about it. In terms of production itself, I've seen so many inefficiency, which is often by the nature of how studios are usually run. You have your employees, you have your budget, you have this and that, and you have a cycle of production, and story needs to be ready there because layout needs to be there. And so I've been in production that you already have a team of 60 animators and you barely have 2 sequences to start. So, okay, let's rush, let's spread all of the work, and oh shit, we need to retake this. Oh, you don't have work. Okay, we're going to take the blocking of this animator and you finish it. And then it's just a mayhem because you stack too many layers on top of another. So how, especially with freelancing and remote, that gives way more flexibility in terms of production, how can we be smarter about, if the story is not ready, it's not ready. It's not going in layout yet. So a way to leverage this flexibility to be smarter about production. So yeah, I would say all the frustration that we accumulated for 15 years in the industry, say, hey, that sucks. Hey, this is not efficient. Hey, this could be done way better. Now we're trying to, and of course we're going through all of the same mistakes as we do it ourselves. Like, oh, okay, it's actually not easy to do. All right, let's persevere, and hopefully by each production, especially on our own, we're in control of it. We can learn from each one and get to a point that, okay, now it's running efficiently in a way that that no one is stressed because they're late, because this person is waiting, because that other end. No, let's rethink about all of this strategy of production.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you go for like feedback on these things? Like, you're setting up, you're thinking of all these solutions that you're implementing in your studio. Obviously you ask your artists how things are going and you get feedback that way, but it probably isn't always totally honest because there's that relationship with you being part of the owner of the company. Is there a place where you go for for straightforward feedback or that you rely the most on?
Again, it's a system, because you're totally right. There's no one freelancer, or actually it happened, and I'm happy when it happened, that some will confront me for a decision or whatever, and I'm like, well, thank you for your transparency, otherwise I would not be aware of the situation. But most of the time, even with supervisors, it's rare. So we've developed over time a lot of different systems. Like each time someone are filling their timesheet, there's a little text box, hey, if there's anything that you'd like to let us know. And there's many sources of frustration that we learned. By end of the week, it's been a shitty week. Oh, I'm going to fill my hours. Here's why I'm unhappy. And like, oh, thanks for letting us know.
Are people actually honest on those things?
Oh yeah, very.
Because I always just ignore it.
Yeah, I know, and most do. But right now, on 180 people, maybe 3 or 4 people are going to put. But each week, so we can catch them there. There's some channel on Slack that we created for that. We have a Kelsey that is doing one-on-one meeting with everyone and say, hey, I'm not in production, I'm kind of separated, but if there's anything and you don't know who to speak to, you can always ask me. So we have different system to make sure that if there's any issues, is going to trickle up. It doesn't mean up to the point that I'll be aware of it. Sometimes it needs to be a bigger problem for me to be aware of it, but it won't be left unknown. And if it's not unknown, something will try to do something.
But what about your like high level decisions? You know, the stuff that is less on a day-to-day basis, more like your instinct to buy this place for the company or. You know.
Yeah, so for the high-level decision, we're 6 partners. We meet once a week, and we discuss about many different things. And all of those decisions, we're, okay, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? How do we make this decision? And I mean, worst comes to worst, we'll just vote on what, and the majority will. But I can literally recall one instance in the last 5 years that we had to vote on something, and it really wasn't important at all.
What was it?
It was almost... It was actually in the blog post that we're sending twice a week. We're actually quite transparent about Agora's operation, way more than most. And it was a post about finances. Here's, how, revenues and all that is distributed. And it was a question of what is our comfort level in terms of how much information do we want to. And in the end, let's share way more than most would be happy actually prevailed. But that's the only time that we had to vote, because some were like, we're not comfortable to share that much. And others in the team were like, yeah, we should totally do, because that's going to show and create trust by showing that, oh my God, okay, they're willing to reveal all of this information. Of what is behind the curtain. So, but other than that, most of the time, I mean, the vast majority of the time, other than this, we discuss about it, we come to a consensus, and this is what, and we're not precious about most decisions. Say, okay, well, based on the information that we have now, this is our best educated guess. So let's just do it, and we're going to readjust.
Educated guess, I love it.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of educated guess in what we're doing.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, did you guys, all 6 partners, did you guys know each other prior to any of this? Did you have a good relationship before?
Yeah, I mean, Eve and I are partner in business and in life.
One of your partners is your wife.
Patrick and Gail are friends from like 20 years ago, so we're super old friends. Sébastien Prou as well, an old friend. Jacob is the only quote-unquote outlier in this sense, but he's someone that I work with at DreamWorks, and we teach together at iAnimate. And I believe he's the first animator that I hired as a freelancer at Eidos, and he's the first animator that I hired at Agora. And when I needed help at Agora, I needed someone to help with supervision. I said, yeah, I can help. What do you need? So he's the only one that was not an old friend from Montreal, but someone that I had known for a decade at that point, and I really trusted. So, but yeah, it's funny. Many are like, "Oh, you should never, do business with friends and family." I'm like, no, that's the best.
That's exactly what
the
you're
best.
doing. Yeah.
I mean, the toughest part when you have business partners is trust. It's literally everything starts with trust, and if you can have people that you've been friends or in a relationship with, a healthy relationship for many years, well, trust is already there. So it's
Ideally.
Ideal.
It's not always the case.
But I would say that that's one of the things that worked really well for our group, is that we get along very well. We're very aligned. We're all very different. Some are more creative, technical, more on the creative freedom spectrum of thing, and others more in the management and security spectrum of things. All different personality, but we're all kind of have the same drive and the same.
Did Jacob
mission.
learn French yet?
He's working on it.
Okay.
He's doing his Duolingo.
Okay. Gonna have to quiz him later.
Yeah. He's at a point I said that he can understand some of it, but he was not comfortable yet to have a little conversation. So it's a work in progress.
How old are your kids?
14 and 12.
Interesting. Did they show?
Oh, 13, actually. 14 and 13.
Okay.
It goes too fast.
Yeah. Do they show any interest in animation?
I would say that definitely my daughter pretty good in drawing, and she did some thumbnailing of 2D animation this year that were like, okay, so she has some inclination, maybe not animation, but something that would be artistic. Mm-hmm. My son is a bit artistic as well, but he's more right now interested more in architecture. Mm-hmm. Something that both Eve and I mean, before when I went to graphic design, it was either graphic design or architecture. Mm-hmm. And Eve have a background in architecture as well. So not directly related to animation, but in the creative, technical spectrum of things. So I don't think that they're. Okay. The apple is going to fall too far from the tree for both of them.
They're not going to be Agora's new little partners.
I have a hard time predict what everything will look like 5 years from now, so I can only.
Yeah, that's where I was
imagine.
going. Like, do you think that there would be, like, even an opportunity for them to animate? How are things looking?
Maybe. I mean, if it will be there. I mean, I have parents that were. An entrepreneur and was in the music field, so I never seriously thought about taking back the family business, but I've always been, driven and like to play music myself. So I played in a way that not directly related to the business, but definitely influenced other aspects. So I would say if they're interested, why not? But that's not something. If they're like, hey, I want to become a lawyer, I might be, wait, what? Really? But that whatever they will want to do. There's no pressure to keep the family business alive. It's literally like, go live your best life, and if it implies being involved in Agora, great.
Is there any concern? So how you're mainly providing animation services amongst others, and now that technology is advancing so quickly, there's some things that are some jobs that are thought to be obsolete by in a few years. Yep. Is that something kind of in the back of your head? Is that the future envision of you that you have right now? Does it involve because I guess Agora's full team would be affected by that.
That's again coming back to there's no point of having the perfect master plan. Yeah. Because something like AI is going to come and say, hey, maybe we need to rethink this master plan. Yeah. It will have a massive impact. It's difficult. We see the potential of the technology. It's unclear how laws and regulation are going to come into play. I mean, I believe that human will protect human in the sense that, of course, within a year, I believe that we'll be able to do a fully animated feature just with AI and like a team of 2 or 3.
Within a year?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean that it will be amazing, but within a year, we can probably do it now. It's just not very convenient. And right now, the difficulty with AI is editing. Like, you can create, like, let's say, an image or even a video is like, okay, that's great, but I want this character to have a red T-shirt. Boom, complete difference. So it's not like you can nitpick and. But I believe within a year, let's say 2 years, we'll be able to do it. Now the question is, would you be able to monetize it? Because if it was trained on models that are using the work of artists to create this thing and it just whitewashed all of this art, can you actually monetize it? And I don't think it will. So it almost feels like we're in the Napster days of AI, and eventually I think that there'll be a model like, okay, this model has been trained on work that's been provided and approved by artists, and there's some part of the royalty like Spotify or Apple Music that are going to go back to artists. That would be a way to kind of relegate, and that's going to take way more time than the technology to be ready to be there. We're also coming back to diversification and the idea that Agora is a global network of talent. Eventually, it might not just be animation, because one of the things that will be, make way faster to produce is anything that is 2D, like VFX and animation are the first one. For a game, probably in 3D environment is going to take maybe a little bit more time, but maybe not that much longer as well. So I don't believe that's the end of our industry, because the end has been predicted for so many times. It never happened. But do we want Agora to rely 100% on providing services in an industry that's going to be heavily disrupted in the next few years? No, we want other things. And I'm not saying that this space is going to become a bakery, but we're thinking of, hey, how can we ensure that we're not going to just be wiped away by this wave of AI? And we're even asking ourselves, how comfortable are we to use AI right now? We're not really using it to replace any artist. We're using it, so different example, like we're rendering in HD and upres in 5K. Well, AI does a great job for that.
Using it to upres?
Yeah, for upresing frames. So that kind of reduce the cost of cloud rendering. We use it when we need to brainstorm. Hey, this is our idea. So kind of brainstorm for different scenario ideas and all that. Also helping with video editing. And so, so right now it's incremental improvement of many different things. But we're very, again, as we have artistic background ourselves, and we're creators originally, we fully feel the pain of those whose work has been used to feed and train those AI that are now, quote unquote, replacing some of this work. So there's an ethical way that even ourselves, we need to figure out how can we be fully transparent about how we're using AI and not look like
stealing work.
Exactly, because that's not something that would be comfortable with ourselves. And if we're thinking about the artist first, how can we say that with a straight face? Oh, by the way, we need half of you. Thank you for your good services in the last few years. We have our new AI that is now doing the work for you. How would that impact?
Can you please supervise this robot?
Yeah, exactly. Can you just create stuff and feed it to him? He's going to figure it out for you. That's we're thinking about it, and right now we're finding ways of using it, but often in ways that are not necessarily creative. But right now, just say, hey, one of the most difficult information about all working remotely in different time zones and this and that is just information management. Anyone needs an information. Oh, that person is on the other side of the world, so you need to wait. So probably having our own chatbot that will be trained on knowing how Agora operates, and you can ask a question of, hey, can you remind me how to fill my timesheet, for instance? Oh yeah, here's the information right away.
Yeah.
So these are the way right now that I'm looking to how can we improve operation in general to make everyone.
So I can replace
easier.
The wiki, basically.
Yeah, because a wiki, you need to go there and find the.
I
just want this, and I just want to ask a question, and it's going to bring back something that hopefully is accurate.
Ultimate laziness.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And I would say if anyone are asking what is the future, how can I prepare myself, I feel that once AI will be able to replace most expertise, it will be very dangerous for those that are expert at just one thing. So the specialist, if you just do this one thing, you're very vulnerable. If you do many different things, yes, you do animation, but you also do rigging, and you also write a little bit, and you also work on this short, and you also have your website, and you also have a presence on social media, and you already also create your characters, and you post your characters, and you can also do this, and you also teach a little bit, and you also, so the more different things that you that you do, the more difficult it will be to replace you specifically at doing all of those different things that you do it in a unique way. So if your specialty is just to enter this screw in the machine over and over and over, it's time to start to broaden your horizon and learn other skills, because the generalists are will be way less affected, I believe, by AI in general.
I feel like one of the things that us as artists are lacking the most when we specialize and we're so tunnel vision in one thing is, and it's going to sound a bit cliche, but communication skills. Because they apply not just only to management, but also communicating with clients, communicating with really anyone. Because you have to constantly... you have to constantly sell your idea or articulate the problem that you're having in a way that is, receptible, or articulate a solution or a couple of different solutions for somebody in a way that it will be received well. And that stuff is not, it's probably the most challenging, that doesn't come naturally to everybody. And I feel like that's going to be applicable even in a world where we are working more with AI, like communicating not just with the bot themselves, but like with the clients too, because then you have to be maybe a little bit more specific about what they want.
It's if you're this annoying person that most don't want to work with, but they have to because you're this expert at this one thing that they need,
exactly,
you're in danger. If you're someone that people actually enjoy being around and enjoy communicate with and enjoy interact with, and you can provide a spectrum of different services and then combine them in different ways to address different, you'll be fine. So I would say soft skills, people skills, communication. Often artists and technicians are not the best communicator in general. But those are anything can be learned, and it would be a good time when we're coming back to everyone can be this one man or woman army and provide services. Practice your craft, but practice your people skills as well, because that's going to be equally as important if you want your clients and others just to enjoy your company. And in the end, very often you don't always go with who's the most qualified or the best at each task, but is who's qualified enough to do a good job at it, but then who do you really want to work with? And when you have to choose, often it comes back to this final selection process.
Can you tell me a little bit about, and I'm trying to formulate this question in my head in a way that makes sense, but so you work with, so I'll start it out with saying, like, there's a lot of different age ranges in what we do in all of our teams, especially at Agora, because it's so diverse, not just in age, but in cultures, everything, etc. Do you find it difficult, or have you seen any differences in the way that people approach work, generationally speaking, like how it started out back when you started? Because you have been in the industry for like, I don't know, 2.5 decades?
Yes. That sounds terrible.
You've been around for a while.
2.5 decades. That's accurate, yes.
You could have a 25-year-old kid. Your industry experience is a 25-year-old kid, So have you seen like a big difference on how people approach, education, but also just work in general?
Yes, there's a lot that is related to each generation. There is a lot that is also related to how was the industry when you started, how was the education system when you started. I'm coming from a place that there was so much scarcity in our industry. Literally, when I started, I had 2 different options after graphic design. One was multimedia, like website and CD-ROMs when we used to do those, and 3D. And there was this, and literally the school told me, if you want to do something that is fun, that you're going to have work and you'll be well paid, go in multimedia. If you want to do something even more fun, but it's quite experimental and you're probably never going to have work, go in 3D.
Interesting.
Yeah, at that time
it was totally the opposite for me.
Exactly. So this is how much it's changed probably in the decade in
Yeah.
between when I went to school and then when you did. So for me, since my experience was that I'm not going to take anything for granted and I'm actually grateful for the studio to hire me, I have a way different perspective than someone that got in the industry at a moment that every studio was fighting for every resources, which means that even an out of school or junior level, you could have very good conditions that we could only aspire to after 3, 4, 5 years of experience. So I think it kind of sets the bar of your expectation. And for me, I'm glad that I started at a point that it was like, okay, I'm actually grateful to have work, compared to a point that, oh, this is actually super easy, and I already have 3 more offers, and I'm just barely starting my my career. Also, I think if we think about, let we go back another generation about the baby boomers, that there was this expectation that you go work, you're going to have a, relationship with your employer, that they're going to take care of you and you'll do the work. You will work X amount of year and then you're going to retire and everything will be fine. And the new generation where there's no commitment, because all of those employers can lay you off at any moment, and we've seen plenty of examples of that. So why will they give their heart and soul to any studio? So I feel that my generation, the very end of Gen X, is kind of in the middle, but I can totally understand the new generation that is just like a bit more mercenary, let's say, by previous generation perspective, that no, I'm going to give you just what I'm willing to give, until maybe there's some trust that is built over time. Also see something that we've adapted, that for us it was quite natural, but when I mentioned this to other studios, like, oh, that's interesting. One of the first things that we ask for anyone that we're hiring in the core team or as employees is, how many hours a week do you want to work? 40, 35, 32, 30, 25? We're not taking for granted the 5 days, 9 to 5 anymore. Many are more than happy. No, I just want to work 30 hours for 4 days, and that's what I'm willing to give. And for us, it's fine. That's what we're going to agree on. So yeah, I would say just, again, they're used to have a way that, okay, this is what work looked like. And now it kind of changed a lot with what are the expectation. And for us, it was kind of a natural fit at first because of freelancing. You're a freelancer anyway. That's going to be a 6 weeks contract, and then after that, let's see how it goes. So it kind of worked well for us. But in terms of work ethic and all that, I have a hard time to say one generation was better than another. I would say probably there's definitely more anxiety now. So there was a way when I was from 20 to 30, you could throw me any amount of overtime, and sometimes I didn't accept to do it, but most of the time it was not a source of stress or being overworked and all that. But that's definitely something that we're more careful with now. If there's more hours to be given, we're very careful to say, hey, who's willing to provide those hours? And if you're not in a position that you can do it, we'll just bring more reinforcement instead of asking everyone to do more hours. So we're kind of adapting over time, that's for sure.
Do you think that, like, because you started out with that sort of background, it's more difficult for you to make decisions about your recent company culture that are appealing to the newer generations? Meaning, like, there's some asks coming from some of the artists that you can't relate to. It's impossible. Why would you expect that? How do you? Does that make it more difficult?
Not really. I cannot recall any ask that I felt that was totally out of place. For me, it's more like is your ask in line with what we can offer? And if it's not, then let's just agree that it doesn't work, and that's it. So it's it's always a question of empathizing with what is behind this request, because sometimes they're requesting sometimes the medication they think that they need is not exactly going to solve their problem. So sometimes there's a discussion of what's the real issue, what are we trying to solve, and sometimes they're right, this is what they're asking for, is what they need, and then we can either offer it or not. And sometimes we're flexible as well, and like, okay, we understand that you're going through this and we're going to adjust accordingly. But no, I don't recall any demand that was like way out of line. And if there were some that we're not comfortable with, or like, listen, this is where, that's the sandbox in which we operate, and this request is just outside so of it, do you have flexibility, or otherwise let's just agree of, hey, let's remain friends, but there's plenty of other employer and studio around that might be more than happy to
It's interesting because I have had experiences where I've worked with people who have been around for as long as you have, and it's often sort of difficult to detach from a way of thinking or even a workflow that they've been doing for so long that they're super familiar with. But I get the sense that you are more flexible than
Well, I think I've adapted so many times. So from going from graphic design and then 3D and then being an animator and then supervising and then directing and then being an instructor and being an entrepreneur and this. And I feel that it's almost like every year I kind of change a little bit how I've been working in many different studios as well, compared to others that have been like 10, 20 years in the same studio, in the same way of doing things. So I think it's just the exercise. I've been living abroad, like in 5 different countries as well. So there's so many different experiences that I had to unroot myself and root in a different way or change, that I think it was probably challenging and difficult in the beginning, and the more it went, the easier it became. So that just became something that was maybe easier for me than most, because I did it many times in the past. But I don't have difficulty to pivot and adjust and change things. I'm usually I have strong opinion, loosely held. That's how I would put it this way. I was like, no, we absolutely want to do this. Actually, that's a great point. Let's go in this direction. Is there, and then I'm committed to go there until there's someone that has a very good argument to convince me to go. So that kind of allow me to go roughly always in the same direction and just over time, and not just spin in circle. But not, go in the wall because I was not willing to adjust.
That's probably one of the things that I take away from you the most. I think that I should apply myself to a little bit more. I think that's a very not just for entrepreneur, not just for like a company, but for as a life thing. Get out of your comfort zone. Try stuff. Don't be too precious. Don't be too precious. Things. It's like the main one. Don't be too precious.
Because when you're too precious, you need to learn from mistakes. That's you want to make sure that those mistakes are not going to kill you. So you want to make sure that you have a safety net. But at the same time, you don't know what you don't know. And to know, you have to explore. And by exploring, you're going to fail. And when you fail, so it's this mentality of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. If if you're in constant analysis paralysis and don't move forward, it might make you feel better right now, but future you is going to resent you from having been so precious and moved so slowly.
Something I just thought about from what you said before, when you mentioned how, when you started out, there weren't as many opportunities, so it took you a little bit longer to get to where you were than it did for people who started out maybe 10 years later, where the industry was booming. Do you think that made it so that the overall quality of animation or artists has gone down?
It's hard to tell, because we were really bad when we started. So I'm not sure. I would say now with all of the good online schools are there and all the material, and you can learn from so many sources. I mean, when I started, the only way I can really learn, I mean, yes, there was a few books, but it was literally Pixar movies, one frame at a time, and analyzing what are they doing, why is it working so well.
We still did that.
We still
too.
do, but it's now one of the many different ways that you can. So did the talent been diluted more as there was more work? Yes, but the education was so much better, and the speed that you could improve was so much better as well, that I think that those two forces kind of counterbalanced themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, well, so maybe the only downside of having that much work opportunity when you get out of school, again, is that's your bar. So when you're going to lose your work and you're going to be out of work for 3 months, you're going to start to be very anxious, because for you this is not normal. As for us, that's normal. That actually when you're going to get the work, it won't be. You don't take it for granted.
We're spoiled, is what you're saying.
Well, it depends. On the short term, yes. On the long term, is it really better to have this abundance this early? Maybe not. I would say one of the thing that is great, for at least my experience, is that when you were in a studio, you needed to be a generalist. You could not just do animation. You also had to understand layout and understand rigging and being able to speak with rendering if there was a problem with simulation because of your. So I feel that force us to be well-rounded and have a lot of tools in our toolkit. It's maybe a downside of those big studios now that's going to hire students right out of schools, and okay, now you just do this, and if you even have any technical problem or anything, you just enter this ticket and someone is going to fix it for you. It's fine, but it's end up having a very narrow understanding of the entire production pipeline. And the more narrow you are, the less you understand others, and the less you understand them, the more difficult it is to empathize with their problem that you might have contributed to, and have the vocabulary and the language to be able to talk about it. So an animator that is able to do some rigging is able to test a rig, and if there's a problem, can have a productive conversation with a rigger instead of, it sucks, it doesn't do that, can you fix it? So I would say maybe that's another downside with this abundance of work, which means that massive team with very narrow tasks that was given to every individual.
Yeah, I feel like for every project at Agora that I've been at so far, there's been a little bit of everything. It's never just like the one task that you need to do. Yeah,
that's come with the. We feel very much like we're managing chaos, and to be able to manage chaos properly, it's so much more difficult if everyone is doing this specific task, because then you need a lot of coordinators that are going to ensure that everyone are doing their specific task the right way at the right time. The more we can have, not necessarily generalists, but someone that is able to manage themselves, that understand the work of others, that interact well with others, that are able to help a little bit if needed, the more versatile and flexible they are, the more cohesion you have within each team, which is something that is quite important. So it doesn't mean that we don't have some needs sometime about this, artist or technician that can, okay, we really just need this at this specific point. But overall, flexibility and, at the very least, to be able to understand what is the person before you and after you have to deal with. That's quite important. And it just shows a level of curiosity, I think, that is healthy in general.
There are some questions from the community that people brought up. I think I asked most of them already. Like they were kind of weaved in there in the conversation. Somebody wanted to know what were the biggest challenges that you were not expecting when you opened up Agora, or like that, as you go.
Biggest challenges that I was not expecting. That's a tough one, because I was not expecting anything. I was just like, I don't know what is in this jungle, but let's go and we'll find out. I would just coming back to something I mentioned before. I felt that it would be more stressful than it is,
Okay.
but I also felt that it would be more fun than it is. So coming back to the uh, not very stressful in general, but sometimes pretty boring, and it needs to be done. When you're an entrepreneur, you often don't have anyone above you that's going to tell you. I mean, I report to everyone in a sense, not everyone individually, but the whole. I mean, I need to make sure that the whole is working properly and well functioning, and we're all, you know, getting along and, you know, liking to work with each other, but at the same time being efficient and productive. So there's many time that, you know, there's something that we know that needs to be done. I really don't want to, and no one's going to force me to do it. So
are you talking about like more managing, like a paperwork type of deal, or?
No, not prepare. Just, I mean, right now we're developing the website of Agora.Community. Is a super motivating and inspiring project on its own. But when you're going page by page and make a dozen decisions on 100 page, this is the kind of mental exercise that can be very taxing, and this and this. So this is just one example. Sometime I need to manage high-level contractual agreement with clients that are not the most fun thing to do, or sometimes I need to prepare a presentation that I would rather do other thing, or sometime I need to figure out how do we deal with this dispute between those two individuals. They're both great person, they both want to, but there are some alignment issues that we need to deal with. I would much rather put my headphone, good music, and animate right now than having to figure out a good strategy to solve this. So, yeah, biggest challenge probably more boring than I thought it would be, and I'm still extremely motivated each morning, but on the mundane, like this thing and this thing and this thing, it's not always fun. And the challenge that it poses to not have anyone that's going to, you know, tell you, hey, this absolutely needs to be done by this date, because I could literally go, no, it doesn't. I can do whatever I want.
Push that 5 days later,
And so this is where the routine of I start at that time, I finish at that time, and this and that is very helpful to kind of have a framework when you're not obligated to do anything specifically. Probably the two biggest thing that probably would have not been on my top 10 list of things of what maybe is going to be challenging to handle.
If somebody was interested in joining Agora, but they didn't necessarily have, you know, personal connections with people within Agora, what would be the best route to take to reach out and get in contact? I know,
just as an artist that we would hire in freelance, for instance?
Because usually we hire people based on connections, and, you know, there's a lot of previous work that we've done together, potentially, or things like this. It's kind of more of a recommendation basis, I would say.
Yes and no, it's part of it, but it's not all of it. I mean, our network of connection, we have a talent pool that grew to 5,400 people now. So we have an application form, so anyone, it's open to the public. You can fill the application. The application will be reviewed, and if it's accepted, based on your experience, skill level from your show reel, and, you know, there's a few things, of course, that we're looking into, then you're going to be sent a second registration form, and when filling this one, then you're going to be in the talent pool, which just mean that at any point, maybe next week, maybe 2 years from now, you might receive, are you available for? So I would say, you know, apply. If your show reel and your experience and all that is good enough, you're going to receive the registration form, and then you'll be in the pool. And then after that is just, you know, how motivated and active do you update your show reel? You know, each time someone is updating their show reel, we have a notification, and we relook at the show reel itself, and we adjust, you know, the each profile accordingly. or you, I mean, there are some that are just super active with Agora.Community, and they are super helpful on Discord and all that. And eventually this information rose up, and there's many that were eventually hired. It's because that they were so active in both Discord or participated to the Anime Challenge. And oh my God, that's an animators that we've been working for years now that we discovered them through the Anime Challenge. So it's just being aware and being there, being kind with others, being helpful sometimes, updating, having your voice heard, and eventually this can add up to being on the radar and, hey, we need 10 artists for this one, are you interested?
I would say, like, just to top that off, like, good work will always be noticed. So if you're doing any work that's and you're posting your work actively and it looks great, there isn't a chance in hell that we're not going to notice it.
Yeah.
At some point, one of us will share it with each other, and we'll see what.
That's something that is becoming more and more important. Are you able to brand yourself properly? There are some, some are masterful at it. Others don't pay enough attention to it. But yeah, if you're out there and you're creating great content and you're proactive and you're sharing and this and that, you're going to be discovered at some point. There's no way that you're not going to be discovered. So the good thing is now all of those channels of communication do exist, which was not the case before. Of course, the flip side is now it's also accessible to everyone else. Yeah. So are you going to make a little bit more effort than everyone else to be out there and being, recognized and known, or not? Because there's definitely others right now that are working on their shit that are going to update tomorrow, and
You're
they're going to stand out.
You're making me anxious, David.
You want some motivation? Think about everyone like you that is working right now instead of procrastinating. It should be enough.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand when you say you're not anxious. You're not an anxious person. I am the complete opposite. So it's like almost like I'm talking to an alien. Like, how the heck do you not think about? And when you just said like branding yourself, I have thought about this a lot because I didn't actually spend a lot of time doing that. In general, not even just animation related, but in general, like social media as a whole. I basically, I post, maybe the last time I posted something was like 4 years ago. I don't really do that. I did spend a lot of time when I first started out, like making good relationships with people, not for any other reason than I just like people. Yeah. And that was kind of one of my big motivators to even stay in this industry, because it's so collaborative and I just like people and I like finding out, and that feeds me. But the idea of having to brand yourself, meaning like put out work that will represent your identity, is so daunting to me.
I think it's putting too much pressure on it. I would just simplify it by how do you want to be recognized? If you're posting picture of yourself, you're going to be recognized how physically you look. If you're posting pictures of your family, you're going to be represented by that. If you just want to be represented by your art, then just post your art. If you want to be represented by one specific part of your art, just post that. If you want to show how versatile you are, post this, and then this, and this, and this, and this. And also, don't forget that at any point there's 0.0001 of the world that's going to see any post, even if it's going viral. So it's an ocean, and you're just a fish in this ocean. Yeah. So it's not like, oh my God, it was a bad post. Now everyone in the world knows that I'm a bad. No one knows, and no one cares, because right now they're thinking about what you think about them. So don't stress with this part. And I would just say, just be truthful to what you want. Don't project the image of someone else. Just project who you are and what you want to bring to the world and what you want to be recognized by. So if you're someone that is very social, that want to do more and more podcasting and eventually different project and the more and more those podcasts are filmed, then yes, it makes sense to post your face because you want to be visually recognized. And when they see you on a thumbnail of note, oh, it's Alejandra. So it needs to be on brand with what you want to create. If you're someone that doesn't want to be under the spotlight and just want to create animation and just this style, just post that. Just be known for this. And if you think that your expertise is too niche, it isn't. We can go through a list of insanely niche interest of people that ended up having millions of followers, because now literally you can connect with everyone.
Would you say
worldwide.
that you spent time branding yourself?
No. I spent time thinking about Agora's branding, but not myself, because I never really wanted me to be under the spotlight. I mean, if it can, contribute to a better understanding of Agora, fine. If there's, even when I was doing it at Eidos to be in presentation, it was more for the project itself, for the franchise, for the studio, me just to get out of my comfort zone and learn that. But branding myself is never something I really paid attention to. But branding Agora, definitely, in a way. So, branding is like, how do we outside world sees Agora, and culture is how do we the inside sees Agoras from the inside out. So culture and branding are two things that I did spend a lot of time thinking about in the last few years.
Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
We should do that more often.
Definitely.